You all right, Bab?
I'm fine, thank you. And to the person that felt nervous when I walked past, you're in good company. My son says that all the time.
No, so your son, you just said that he walks past. You've got a son, and he has been a main driver for a lot of things that you've done. Tell me more about him and why. Why has he been the driver?
Oh, so my son, I often say, is the person that saved my life. And I say that with all sincerity. I am a single mum. Well, I say single mum, he's 26, I talk like he's a child still. But I was a single mum for my son. And I came from not the easiest of backgrounds. My mum worked incredibly hard, and she did everything that she could for me. But I left home at 16. I became a homeless teenager of the city. I'd faced a lot of adversity. And I say homelessness because I've told the story so many times, like it's an easy thing, but it's not. Anybody that's been through it. You know, I remember fighting with my friend over the last 50 pence because one wanted to buy pop and the other one wanted to buy a single cigarette. I remember having porridge for breakfast, lunch and dinner because we didn't have any more money until Gyro Day came. And I remember walking from Moseley to Washwood Heath with my bag of washing just so my aunt could wash my clothes and I could have a Sunday.
And that's quite a distance for people that don't know Birmingham.
Yes, and that was as a teenager. So, you know, I could have gone on a slippery slope. I've seen a lot of things. I witnessed a lot of things. I was around a lot of different people. And my son came along and he was just my game changer. So he is a huge influence in my life, as many parents would say. But he gave me the motivation because I'm naturally a hip-hop and R&B 90s girl. So I was really convinced that I did not want my son's main influence to be somebody at the end of a track. I wanted to be his motivation and his inspiration and his role model. And in order to do that, I needed to get myself together. So that was it.
Fantastic. So I've deliberately not said who you are and what roles you have, because I'd like to talk to you, before we get to that, about 2010. 2010 was a game-changing year for you. So you've had your son, you told us about you want him to have a better influence, a better way, a better life forward. So what happened in 2010?
So 2010, we all realised as the clock struck 12, the world didn't end. But for me, it was a game changer because I had this sort of moment. And the only way I can describe it was like having a set of keys to your new house. You walk in, you're really excited, curtains don't fit, it's a little bit dated, it needs a rewire, and it could do with a new kitchen. That's what I felt about my own life. I felt like I needed a rewire. I felt like I'd outgrown some stuff. I felt like I knew I wanted to go in a different direction. I knew I wanted change for my son. I just didn't know how to do it. So in 2010, I said, away with a New Year's resolution. I promised myself I would change my life in a decade.
10 years?
10 years.
That's a long time. Why did you 10?
It was a good measure. It meant that I could really think about each year. I really wanted to do things differently. And whilst it sounds like a long time, for those that are of an age that I am, you remember the advert L'Oreal, and it always says, because I'm worth it. And I absolutely believed 10 years, because I'm worth it. And that was the decade that I wanted to change it, and I was going on that entire holistic journey. I was going to stop resisting, but I was going to persist. So persist, not resist. I was going to be open to new things, challenging, try and go down, look at different career paths, really rewire myself from the basement to the attic, mindset and everything. What was I going to read? I'm dyslexic. I also didn't know my alphabet until I was 21. It was never picked up. There's a whole host of things of me that had imposter syndrome that needed rewiring in order for me to move forward.
Fabulous, and we'll talk a little bit more about what happens in those 10 years. But we've got a shared history. We've both worked with people that are underrepresented, but specifically people that experience homelessness and have that vulnerability. And you've mentioned that, but there were two key people on your journey, one who's experienced it and one who led and managed you. Tell me a little bit about those people, because I think when you start a journey of change, you need allies and advocates around you, and you've got two very strong allies. So tell me a little bit, first Paddy and then someone else.
So Paddy was someone I met later on in life. Paddy was a rough sleeper in Birmingham. And I'd met Paddy through a friend of mine who was doing outreach. And I decided in this decade that I was going to put myself to be elected. And the year before I did, my friend introduced me to Paddy, who was rough sleeping. And Paddy didn't understand the context of what I was doing, and I didn't expect him to. But Paddy just saw me as Shazza, to be quite honest. I would leave the council house and I would just go to this place where they used to bed down, and I'd take the biscuits and we'd sit down, we'd chill. And I said to him one day, Pad, I can't promise you change, but I promise you I'll try and get your voices heard. And Paddy was a huge driving force for everything that I've done around the homelessness agenda. We did scrutiny reports. I brought the rough sleepers into the council house to actually tell people what it's like living on the streets. They took us out and showed us where they were living. There was epiphany, moments, when someone says to you, well, Shaz, you deal with a diary, 2 p.m. on the 2nd of April doesn't mean anything to me because I'm thinking about where am I bedding down at night. So he completely changed my whole mindset around how we support people and was definitely a driving force. And actually a lot of the services, when they interacted with Paddy, he would talk to them about Shaz. And it with the police and everybody, and they'd be like, who's this Shaz? And she'd be like, she's my support worker, she's my mate. And I'd go into meetings and they'd be talking about him, so it was quite interesting. But he was a huge, huge factor. And, God rest his soul, he passed away, but he did get reunited with his family.
And that's because we both believe in experts that give in their experience, right? We both believe in lived experience. They're the people that are the experts, not people that sit at high towers or have high titles. And that's why I haven't discussed your titles at the moment, because there's some other ally that was a big influence on you. But I'd like the audience to understand that you're a big advocate of that. Experts by experience. We all have an experience. We all have a voice and we all have something to tell.
Definitely, and I consider myself to be an expert by experience, and I think we all are in our own way, and sometimes it's undervalued, the voices of people with real life experiences. The other person that was a huge influence for me is someone I call the Gaffer. And the Gaffer was one of my old line managers called Graham. Incredible ally, Scottish guy who was so different. But he just took me under his wing and he'd be like, oh, come on, Sharon, pull yourself together, pull up your socks, girl, and everything else that came with it. But he really kind of, when I didn't believe in myself and kind of felt like I was kind of almost blagging my way through, he was the one that would say, I think you should do this. No, you need to look at this. And he would push me that little bit further. And because I was dyslexic, I didn't know my alphabet and everything else. I did have a handful of GCSEs. I was convinced my wiring that I was not academic. And Graham talked me into joining the Open University and returning to study. And I had lots of excuses of why I couldn't do it as a single mum. I had a job, there was so much, it was this. But that was a game changer for me, and his wife encouraged me and actually went on that journey with the Open University, became their Midlands Inspirational Learner of the Year, and then got through some of my studies and then decided on a directional change.
I know. So it's really important, absolutely, round of applause to both Graham and Paddy. And all the allies that we have, and I think it's really important to remember sometimes that allies are there that will push and pull, but allies are there sometimes that you need to say yes please. We've got to remember to say yes please and then carry the baton on. So the one thing that we haven't spoken about, because we deliberately didn't want to, but the Open University led you to lots of opportunities, and you started off as a magistrate, but I'd like you to talk about that 10 years and the things that you did achieve, because I think sometimes we need to shout about and celebrate, and I have said at the beginning, representation matters. And I think an audience hearing from a very strong Black West Midlands woman about what she did achieve in those 10 years is really important. So I'd like you to talk about your squiggly career, please.
Okay. So I met with Waits, Women Acting in Today's Society, and we went into the Home Office and we challenged about not reaching into communities and not supporting diversities and those that live in areas where, they feel left behind. I didn't always understand the context of the places I was in, but I had a lot to say. So I was meeting with ministers and I just didn't really care, I just had to say what I had to say. it was quite interesting. I'd become a magistrate, and then we're going into schools, into communities, talking about representation, why we needed more females, more ethnic minorities, and going into become magistrates, why it was everyday people in communities. You didn't have to have a legal background, it didn't matter what you did, you could do that. And using myself as an example. And then I studied, and then I thought, my friend wanted to stand for election, and I said that I would help her. So I helped her with her election. We had no money. And I was her campaign support person, and I literally went round asking people to buy a packet of paper. That's all I wanted from you. Buy us a packet of paper. I got so much paper that I went somewhere else and said, if I bring my paper, will you print the leaflet? So we were just doing things differently. And then eventually, I was working for the council, and I was a community worker running a community centre. And the councillor came in, and I was like, I don't know what you do. I don't know why I said it. I don't recommend it. I did say it. I said, I don't know what you do. And he said, well, shadow me. And I said, okay, then I will. And I shadowed him, and actually he said to me, you'd make a good councillor. And I went, yeah, you're all right, you are. So I put myself forward to become elected, and I got elected in 2014 as a local councillor. I had a 87% majority, which was great. Not all because of me, but it was good. So that was fantastic. And I kept my promise to Paddy. So I went on a scrutiny committee. I asked them to do a report into homelessness. And we did a lot of work with Paddy. We put a lot of changes in. There was recommendations for the council. I worked with third parties. And then I went on to convince my group that we needed a manifesto just on homelessness. And did that, and then the boss said, well, now you've done that, you need to be the cabinet member because you're going to have to deliver on it. I hadn't thought that one through. So I went into the cabinet, and I had the housing and homelessness portfolio for the city, and then ended up speaking on national platforms. So Sir Bob Kerslate's commission, I was one of 17 that went onto that from across the country, and I represented the West Midlands. I did a lot of stuff with different charities, organisations. I've spoken at what they call AP, all party parliamentary groups, APPGs. I've pushed for a select committee hearing, which is quite hard to do as a local councillor, into supported housing. Brought the select committee to Birmingham to look at the issues. There's legislation changes that are going through now as a catalyst of some of the work that I'd pushed and started. And then 2 years ago...
yeah, come on.
2 years
ago. 2 years ago, what happened?
2 years ago, I became the deputy leader for Birmingham City Council. So I'm the first black or Asian person to hold the post. Very challenging. Well, it's very challenging. Very challenging, to say the least. But it's always about the people and the people that we serve, and making sure that we fix the things we need to fix, and really drive things forward for people, because social change is a huge thing for me, and particularly coming from where I come from. So I always push about, okay, you can change policy, but actually are you creating policies that people are falling through? How do we bring in experts by experience to the table? And then last year...
Go on, I was going to say.
Last year...
And the last couple?
And last year in June, I was appointed the Deputy Mayor for the Combined Authority.
And I think that's really important for people to understand something that Sharon said to me on a call. Kick down doors for opportunities. And I think when someone says shadow me, I think a few people in this room, or maybe a majority, would have gone, yeah, okay. And you went, yeah, right. And I think sometimes to be that brazen and to be that, I'm going to take these opportunities, sometimes we fear to take them and we don't know what door that could have opened. So I know you're a big advocate on that, of kicking down doors and finding opportunities. So tell me now, in the role as Deputy Mayor and as Councillor, and what you're doing for Birmingham and the West Midlands, tell me a bit more about that. How are you making sure that we're still kicking down doors?
So, and I think the important thing is it is about kicking down doors and creating opportunities, but it's also not being what I call a ladder grabber. So, you get through a door, you pull up the ladder and you say, see you later to everybody behind you. It's about making sure that you're also creating opportunities for other people. And sometimes the small things that we do on a day-to-day basis, and that's for everybody, that we take for granted, that actually somebody else would see as a golden opportunity. So it's about making sure you do that. The other thing that's really important to me is, and this is as a black female, is, don't expect other people to be a good ally if you're not prepared to be one yourself. Yeah. So there is also that aspect, and also never dragging other women in public. Well, I don't mean literally dragging, but you know what I mean. Not criticising people on a personal level when it's so hard to be in the space yourself. So some of the things that I'm doing across the West Midlands, particularly around sort of the housing piece and sort of place, I'm doing a lot around jobs and skills, and my real thing for the whole of the West Midlands is really, this should be a place of choice. People should choose to live here, choose to work here, and I don't think anyone should have to leave here because there's no opportunity. We have to create opportunity, and actually if we're not doing it for the people of the region, then what's the point? Might as well go home. So that's for me really, really important. But I guess my key real message for me is, I know it's easy when I tell my story and people go, oh, that's great, but really we've all got greatness within us, and everyone has the opportunity to do different things. Everybody has the opportunity to find the key to a door, to let somebody else through, but also create your own opportunity and your own resilience. And I think that's really important. I make sure on a weekly basis, every Friday I will email somebody just to say thank you and I appreciate you. That makes me intentional about looking at what other people are doing and actually honouring other people. I'd always support other people and what they're doing, and it's always good to be a good ally.
Absolutely, and I follow suit with that on a Wednesday. Our team stands up and everyone's got to find thanks, even if it's you turned up to the meeting. Because I think sometimes we forget to say thank you and we forget to, celebrate people, but we're quite quick to tell people where they're not doing things particularly well. So that's great to hear. 2 things and then we'll finish our chat. Not limiting yourself.
It's just dreadful. We all do it. These limiting belief systems, and actually, if I'd listened to them, I probably wouldn't be here now, and I'm probably living what I would have considered to be dreadful and uncomfortable back then. So it really is about not. I know it's easier said than done, but actually not limiting yourself. I'm dyslexic, but I make sure I read a minimum of 1 book a month. I make sure that I'm planning stuff so I'm not limiting. I'm making sure that I'm doing things that I wouldn't necessarily do. R&B girl, and then I went to go and see Bruce Springsteen just for the excitement of it all, because I wanted to not be limited to the experiences and the environment that I was placed in, but I wanted to step out and see what other things were doing. So yes, it's really important, and the biggest thing for me for the 10 years was it meant that I had to plan, I had to think, I had to be open. And one thing that I carry with me now is, I hated to-do lists. I live by them now, much to my son's disappointment. But one of the things now is that when you're creating to-do lists for yourself, you should always put something on there that your future self will thank you for. Otherwise, you're just constantly just stuck in the current moment. You have to be present, but you also have to think about tomorrow and your future self and do that for other people. And actually, when other people are being limiting in their belief systems, we have to sometimes step back and actually be the cheerleader. So the greatest position you can have in life is to be a cheerleader for other people. It's so satisfying, but it's helping them to get to where they need to get to as well. So it's not about self, it is about growing others, and between us, we can create a better society if we all think of it as a jigsaw puzzle, that we've got a part to play, and we are a piece of the jigsaw puzzle for ourselves and the people around us in our neighbourhoods or our immediate environment.
Boom. Thank you, Sharon. One last question from me, and I think it's really important because we've gone through all of your job titles and all of your achievements, but what would your son say about his mum?
Mixed bag on this one. My son's very proud of me, to be honest with you. He's because, you know, back in the day, I used to watch a lot of cartoons with my son, so we used to refer to ourselves being like Lilo and Stitch. A little bit broken, but we were good. So you know, he's been my sidekick for all these years, so he's very proud of me. But also, I take the responsibility that what I've done can't be seen as pressure for him to think, oh gosh, I've got to do something that's different or extraordinary. So he's very proud of me. I do sometimes joke that I do think sometimes he went and told someone that I spent far too much time at home and I needed something to do, hence why I end up with the roles that I've got. But no, but he does see me as his role model as much as I see him as one of mine. So we have an incredible relationship. So yeah, he sees me as his best friend, which is great by all measures. But sometimes I'm like, mate, I don't want to go on holiday with you this year. I want to go on my own. So so it's brilliant. He's very proud. Very proud.
Fantastic. And I think sometimes remembering those close relationships or holding on to them as important as your professional ones. So can we give a massive round of applause for Councillor Sharon Thompson?